At the beginning of 2026, I decided to do something I had never done before. I started a TikTok channel. But the real reason I started TikTok wasn't because I wanted to become a content creator. It started with a question. While reading The One Thing by Gary Keller, I came across an idea. The idea is this: what's one thing I can do this year that, if I did it well, would make everything else easier later on? I thought about it for a while and I realized the answer wasn't writing a book. The answer was changing my identity. More specifically, becoming the kind of person who could share ideas publicly without consistently qualifying them, over editing them, or worrying about what everyone else would think. But then that raised another question: how do you intentionally change your identity? The answer I arrived at was surprisingly simple. You do not begin with identity, you begin with fulfilling a role. You intentionally step into that role over and over until it no longer feels foreign. For me, that meant becoming someone who shared one clear idea to the public on a regular basis. Every time I pressed post, I crossed a threshold. The act was irreversible. Once an idea entered the world, it no longer belonged only to me. It had to stand on its own. And that's what TikTok became for me. Not just a social media platform, but a training ground. A place where I could repeatedly practice becoming the person I wanted to be. Along the way, I started asking a different question: when does a person's life actually change? That question sent me down a rabbit hole of researching thresholds and liminality and rites of passage, formation, and human development. And as I read, reflected, journaled, and connected ideas, I began seeing patterns everywhere. Some ideas came from books, some ideas came from conversations, some came from experiences I couldn't stop thinking about. Some eventually found their way into my Antinet. What mattered wasn't where the ideas began. What mattered was following them long enough to discover the larger pattern they were pointing toward. TikTok became one of the ways that I tested those patterns against reality. It's easy to think that you have a profound idea when it stays inside of your notebook. It's much harder to publish it and let other people respond to it and grade it. If people stopped watching after 3 seconds, my opening wasn't clear enough. If they stayed, something had captured their attention. If they commented, shared the video, or said, "I've never thought about it that way," I had learned something. The analytics weren't just numbers to me, they were feedback. And just as connecting notes reveals patterns in your thinking, connecting audience feedback reveals patterns in your communication. Over time, I realized I wasn't just building an audience, I was refining my ideas. Eventually, those ideas became the foundation of a framework that I developed called the Formation Ladder. And one of its central principles is that identity doesn't come first. Role comes before identity. And role is the third rung on a four-rung ladder. Identity is the fourth. You intentionally occupy a role before it feels natural. And then through repetition, the unfamiliar becomes familiar. You begin sending yourself a consistent signal that says, "This is something I do." And as that role becomes familiar, it becomes believable. And eventually, it becomes a part of your identity. For me, the role was public thinker. Every video was another repetition. Every repetition was another threshold that I crossed. And over time, I wasn't pretending anymore. I had become the kind of person who shares ideas publicly. That framework eventually became one of the foundations for my book, So You Were Neglected, Now What? How to Finish the Formation That Childhood Interrupted. On this channel, I want to take you behind the scenes of that on that journey. Not just the conclusions, but how I arrived at them. The books that changed my thinking. The questions I couldn't let go of. the experiments that worked, or even the ones that failed, and how piece by piece those ideas eventually became a book. If that sounds interesting to you, I'd love for you to join me.